The second way is through possession. Now, if you've watched shows and you've watched Pawn Stars, you know how pawn shops work. You maybe have friends who have pawned items. Well, when you pawn an item, typically the pawn shop is not buying the item from you and then attempting to resell it. Instead, what a pawn shop is a lender, and the pawn shop will loan you money in exchange for a security interest in the collateral. And by the way, we're going to protect our security interest in that collateral by taking possession of the item. And then typically the borrower has 90 to 120 days in which to repay the loan plus interest. If they do not do so, then the pawn shop keeps the good that was pledged and then they can resell it. So in this case, the priority date of perfection by possession is the date the creditor takes possession. So we can perfect our loan by taking possession of the collateral. And again, oftentimes used for things that is easily movable, artwork, musical instruments, jewelry, and that's why we tend to associate this with pawn shops. Perfection by control. Perfection by control often is used for intangible items like financial products and accounts, generally stockbrokers. You may have heard of the concept of borrowing money on margin, in which the stockbroker loans their client money to acquire stock. And in exchange for that loan, the stockbroker takes a security interest in the stock that is being bought. And to protect its security interest over other creditors, they acquire the ability to control the sale of those securities. So if I borrow money from my stockbroker based on securities that I have pledged, the stockbroker gets the opportunity to sell those if I don't repay my money. So this control is often achieved through a third party, a custodian, or what's called a transfer agent. But again, this is used primarily for the sale when we use financing arrangements for the sale of stock, which some of you may be involved with right now or which you may encounter in the future. And finally, we have automatic perfection. If you're a lender, this is the best kind of perfection, right? It automatically perfects. It automatically pushes you to the front of the line. And we do this through what's called a purchase money security interest, often called a PMSI. And the way a PMSI is created is when a lender lends money for the purchase of the item to be used as collateral, then that extension of money is called a purchase money. The lender takes a purchase money security interest in that collateral. So a PMSI arises when the money that's borrowed is used to purchase the collateral that's going to be pledged to secure repayment of the amount borrowed. So those are the specific circumstances of a PMSI. And a PMSI does not need filing to perfect. Instead, it perfects when the goods are sold, at the time of the sale, the time the sale is made. And this is what we typically see in automobiles, buying a vehicle. When the lender loans you money to buy the vehicle, and you buy the vehicle, the lender takes what's called a purchase money security interest in that collateral, and it automatically perfects, meaning the lender in that case is automatically pushed to the front of the line. I could pledge that vehicle to another lender down the road, but that secondary lender is going to be secondary in right to the first lender who provided the funds with which to buy the collateral. Perfection has to be maintained or it will lapse. As I said, this financing statement is only effective for a limited period of time, generally 5 years from the date it's filed. You must renew it, and you must renew it within 6 months of the date on which it is set to expire. If you attempt to renew it prior to that time, that attempted renewal is ineffective. If you wait until after the date, that you have lost your place in line to any other subsequent creditors. Priorities, again, I'm going to give you a whole lecture on priorities, but I thought we would include just the basics here. We know that multiple parties can have a security interest in the same property, The general rule is whoever perfected the security interest first or filed the UCC-1 statement, which is perfecting a security interest, has priority. In considering priority, and there's going to be questions on your exam in which I ask you which creditor has priority, the general rule to follow, and the one you can always rely on, is this: first in time equals first in right. And again, in the lecture on priorities, we'll talk more about that. But whichever was perfected first or whichever attached first, those are the first ones in line. So the general ranking of claims is PMSI. We know that's automatic perfection, which means it automatically gets pushed to the front of the line. Second to that is the first to perfect a security interest, meaning we have two secured creditors, both of which perfect. Whoever did so first has priority. If you have a secured lender without a perfected security interest, meaning they have relied simply on attachment, then they are going to come third in priority, and then unsecured creditors come last. The consequences of a borrower's default: again, a borrower who breaches a contract with a lender, ordinarily they have failed to repay the loan, will trigger what's called a default. And a default means that the creditor now has a right against that collateral. They can seize that collateral and they can have the sheriff sell it. They may be able to sell it themselves if they repossess the collateral. But in any event, they have the ability to take action against that collateral, against the property which was pledged as collateral. However, you should know creditors don't typically like to seize collateral. They do so only as a last resort. The creditor is not interested in taking your car or your refrigerator. Instead, they want the money that's going to be used to repay that. So often lenders don't seek to immediately repossess the property, but instead would encourage ways for you to repay the loan, either through refinancing or some other alternative solution. So the borrower who breaches their obligation to repay the money is in default, which gives the creditors the right to act against the collateral. However, typically they don't like to do so. Now, a secure lender may repossess the collateral, and in the law we call this self-help repossession. A secured lender may seize the collateral either by going to court and obtaining a judgment and have a sheriff go to take the collateral, or more likely using the services of a third-party company, a repossession agent. Well, oftentimes we call them repo agent, and we can contract with them. Now, what that means is that this party who's acting on behalf of the creditor has the right to go and seize that collateral, to take that vehicle, for instance, and bring it back to the creditor, then to be sold and have the proceeds of that sale applied to the underlying debt. Now, one thing that you should know is the law does allow this is self-help repossession. However, the repossession must be done in a way that does not breach the peace. Meaning, well, it's hard to say. Breaching the peace is a very gray area. If I go as a repo agent to take someone's car and it's parked in the parking lot and I back up and I load it up onto my tow truck and drive it away, not breach the peace. If you come out while I'm taking the car and you say, don't take my car, but there's no interaction, there's no violent interaction, I can take the car, no breach of the peace. If, however, we get into a fight on account of me trying to repossess the car, then that does breach the peace, and therefore we lose our opportunity for self-help repossession. So it's a very gray area, but one that you should know about. So in conclusion, what did we learn in this lecture? The concept of the security interest lies at the core of secured transactions law. Perfecting a security interest protects secured creditors from other creditors. There are different ways of perfecting, and make sure you understand all four that we discussed. And we know that perfection must be maintained or it will lapse. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Thank you.